I walk through the shadow of death left to fear. This is a journey through the halls of hell.
Yes people, what is good? I am BA, back once again with another little quick movie review, and we will be back to our normal reactions as usual next week. This week I wanted to talk about the movie I saw recently called Trap. It's another film which is written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Now let me talk about M. Night for a minute, because over recent years it's become a meme that a lot of his movies are bad. It started with the movie The Happening, and since then it's just became the popular thing to do to shit on this guy. Me personally, he was one of my favourite directors. Like, his first 4 films made him my single favourite director for a long time. From The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, and then The Village and Signs. I loved all 4 of those films, and at the time I thought he was truly unique in that he was taking the classic style from the old EC comics and all the sort of comics that came out around that time. Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, shock suspense stories, the lists go on, and you can tell that people like M. Night and Steven Spielberg were students of these comics growing up, because all these comics were really potent in their premises and they all had really clever twists. Now, you might mistake M. Night for an absolute genius if you don't know the history of EC Comics, but as you comb through their back catalogue, you will start to see that almost every clever twist that has been used in the last 20 years, EC Comics probably did it or something similar to it many moons ago. So if you've never checked out EC Comics, I highly recommend you do. So many clever short stories and so many clever twists, and just because it's being told in the visual medium of comic books, I feel like some people would brush past that as art not worth checking out, but trust me, it really is. And especially if you're a creative writer, it is such good material to influence your mind, to not to copy these ideas, but to make you think in these clever directions that other writers in the past also took themselves to think of these unique ideas. Anyway, sorry about the EC comic diatribe, but trust me, if you don't know, you really need to go and check him out, especially if you like directors like M. Night Shyamalan. Now, I'm going to hold my hands up and also admit that after his first 4 movies, his back catalogue became hit or miss. And yes, it is easy to pick on his misses and label him a certain way, but I'll say this, in a current landscape of movies being made where studios really don't take chances on anything other than sequels, material that is based on popular books or superhero movies, M. Night Shyamalan, every time he makes a film, barring The Last Airbender I guess, he is trying a unique original premise, and that's what I see him as. He's a premise guy. That's his strong point, thinking of a really good premise and then thinking of a really good punchline to that premise. Or sometimes he probably thinks of the punchline first and then works backwards to figure out a way to hide it through his premise. But I will say, in recent years, he has had a return to form in that there's been a couple of his movies which I feel like are not as classic maybe as his first 4, but go into the, if you like him as a director, definitely watch them pile. I really liked The Visit, even though it wasn't perfect. It was a really good premise, really good punchline, and had some interesting things going on within that and some really unique scenes and set pieces. And I also thought Split was absolutely incredible, and it's not just because he's Scottish, but I mean James McAvoy puts in the acting performance of an absolute lifetime in that movie. And even aside from that, I just think it's a genius movie, and the reveal at the end that it is connected to something else was just the icing on the cake for me. It was an incredible experience. I think it was so well acted, not just by James McAvoy, but also all the other actors involved in that movie. And I'm just a bit heartbroken that Glass was really flawed, because that would have been such a perfect trilogy to me with Unbreakable, Split and Glass if he'd have pulled it off. But I feel like Glass, there was a lot of stuff in it going on that I wasn't sure about. There was other moments in it which were really great, like even his worst things do have great moments in it. But yeah, just not a satisfying end to the trilogy for me. And with the M. Night summary out of the way, let's talk about Trap. Trap is about a firefighter who takes his daughter to a concert. And this isn't a spoiler. I don't want to get too heavy on the spoilers, but he's actually a serial killer with someone currently trapped in a basement in a location which he can check on them from his mobile phone from. Like he's got an application on his phone where he can click onto a camera and just watch the person he's currently got kidnapped. Now, where it gets interesting is this entire concert has been set up as a trap to catch him. Somehow, they have figured out that the serial killer is going to be there, and they have set up this entire thing as a sting operation and the SWAT team surrounding all the exits. And this is the basic setup of the movie, and I love it as a premise. It is the classic cat and mouse story. You've got a criminal profiler working outside that is anticipating his every move. She knows exactly how he thinks, and she's got everything covered. It is a constant game of him trying and probing methods to somehow get out of this arena undetected, and then constantly cutting back to this criminal profiler who has already anticipated that move and is one step ahead of him. Also, shout out to M. Night's daughter, who makes her acting debut as the singer. I believe she's also a singer in real life. Like, I'm a hip-hop person, very underground, very anti-pop, so I don't know nothing about any of these mainstream pop singer people. But you know, good luck to her. She put in a good acting performance. Nepotism is alive and well. Now, the strength of this movie is exactly what I was just explaining a minute ago. To me, it's at its cleverest when he is trying to figure out different methods to get into different parts of the building and figure a way out, and the criminal profiler thwarting him. It's so great that I feel like he should have sat with that concept longer and thought of more set pieces and different ideas and extended that to make it the bulk of the movie. Because going into this movie, I expected that to be the bulk of it. It's actually not. It's just the first hour, and then there's an additional 50 minutes after that, and I feel like this is where the movie started to lose steam for me and also fell into the realms of just stereotypical third act, you know, thriller, suspense, horror type vibes. Some people don't like the concept of the third act because the singer on stage becomes directly involved in the storyline, but I'm not mad at it. It makes sense to me. Again, I'm trying not to get into spoilers, but the way they naturally meet this singer and then she gets involved in the story does feel organic to me. So I don't think it's heavy-handed, and I don't mind that. I just feel like when they do take it there and leave the arena, it just gets a bit formulaic for me, and nothing that happens after that point feels unique or new or fresh. And even though we've had many cat and mouse sort of stories in the past, the premise of this movie and then the psychological warfare of it were the two things it really had going for it. Also, I want to say that even though I feel like the third act does make it not as good as it could have been, I would watch this movie again just for the first hour. I really liked the first hour. Josh Hartnett is playing the firefighter serial killer guy. He puts in a great performance. He's had some really dark roles the last few years between this and his episode of Black Mirror. Good God, Josh, I don't know what you're going through personally. I don't know if your agent just sees a glassy stare in your eye and only slides you certain scripts, but yeah, maybe try something a bit more light-hearted next time, bro. The other thing I didn't really like that was used in this movie is that he had this mechanism set up in the room with the person he had captured in a basement in a house we don't know the location of, which would release a poisonous gas and kill the person. And to me, it just seemed a bit Bond villainy, you know, if you say anything, I will press this button and this person will be gassed. I don't know. Not to say that obviously in this day and age with technology, that's a completely possible piece of technology someone would have. For me, it just seemed slightly convoluted, but maybe that's just for me. Maybe other people wouldn't have been mad at that at all. But for me, that one element I was like, man, sometimes M. Night just writes something that brings it into the level of cheese, and what makes it strange is the rest of the movie isn't going for that tone, so it's like sometimes he actually writes unintentionally cheesy shit rather than being in on the joke. Another example of this is right at the start of Glass, which if you look at that as a series has all been serious drama. The set pieces were really legitimate. If you think about Unbreakable, when Bruce Willis finally fights a guy, there's nothing cinematic about it. He jumps on his back and strangles him while he's getting slammed into tables and walls and shit. It's as real as it gets. The first thing you see in Glass is a guy getting Superman punched. I was like, this is really cheesy over the top straight away. Why did you start the film like this? It would have been far more visceral and hard hitting to have a, horrible gang attack rather than a weird cinematic Superman punch. Yes, happy slapping is still some bullshit act, but the way you filmed it and wrote it made it weird and cheesy right off the bat. I can't help myself. I could talk about M. Night all night. That's me bounced back to Glass when I'm supposed to be talking about Trap. Anyways, long story short, I would give Trap a 7 out of 10, and that's as an M. Night Shyamalan fan, so perhaps some other people would rate it lower, but I think that it was strong enough in the first portion and a half, first two portions, that it kept my interest, and the premise was unique and fresh enough, and that just brings me back to my original point about M. Night, whether he's slinging a hit, a miss, a near hit, a miss that should have been a hit, or somewhere in between, he is generally trying a unique concept which is not being enforced upon him by a studio executive. He's sitting there with his mind and thinking, what's a clever little idea? What's a good little twist? And I will always support people trying new, fresh, creative ideas in Hollywood, especially with it being as stale as the current climate is. So yeah, that was my review of Trap. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And if you've never read EC Comics or looked at some of the other movies I mentioned by M. Night, do yourself a favour and check them out. Just if you like fresh, creative stuff. I mean, we can all just click on any film or read anything that just is like 100 other things. And EC Comics and M. Night were both writers in their fields trying to bring new ideas to the table and use their minds to create fresh things and never just following the current trends that people wanted to see. Man, how bland would everything be without people like those guys still making movies. So yeah, that has been my review of Trap. We will be back to the reactions next week. I have been BA. Peace.